Hey, this is Walter Jones.
This is Austin St. John.
And you're listening to
Ranger Danger.
Go, go, Ranger Danger! Matt and Michael's Ranger Danger!
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Ranger Danger Boom Room. This is the podcast where we talk about the Power Rangers comics coming from Boom Studios. And once again, we have our returning guest, I guess is the right term. Yeah. Mr. Kyle Higgins, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. How are you, Kyle?
I'm pretty good. I mean, I feel like at this point, is there a boom room if I'm not in it? I mean, is it returning guest? I don't know. I thought our relationship had progressed.
Yeah. Look, I feel like I did do you a disservice there, Kyle, and I apologize.
I mean, like, at least if you're going to break up with me, do it, over the internet.
I can promise you that. But no, there's no breaking up. I'm committed to our podcasting relationship.
Ranger Danger Boom Room co-host Kyle Higgins.
There you go. Okay, I can get behind that. By the way, I'm definitely the biggest prima donna of the co-hosts on Ranger Danger.
That's definitely not true.
What are you saying?
That you know some of the people that we've had on this show.
Oh, no, but they are guests.
In the boom room. Boom room.
Okay.
Of us three.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
We can let Kyle have that one, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
sure, okay.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about issue number 5 of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic.
Yeah.
And it is a special one because it is the sort of the special small story between arcs, I guess. And yeah, I'm very excited to dig into this one because it was being sort of a whole story within one issue. I think it'd be fun for us to break it down and go through it. Yeah. But before we get to that though, Kyle, anything changed in your world Power Rangers-wise that we should be talking about?
Has anything changed Power Rangers-wise? No, it has not.
Okay.
Maybe? I don't know. I don't know what my world was. A lot of things happen on a daily basis in Power Rangers
You have
world.
been to San Diego Comic-Con since we last spoke to you.
Yes.
How was that?
Yeah, I was down at San Diego Comic-Con. We had quite the Power Rangers presence. It was actually it was a pretty cool show this year. For me, it was pretty low key in regards to like, I just kind of stayed at one place, like at literally the hotel, like, I was staying in. I had drinks there and dinner there, like each night. Like I didn't really go out. So from that, like I got to the gym one morning. Like it was pretty like, yeah, it was pretty like old man Comic-Con for me. But on the Power Rangers front, it was pretty awesome. Like I signed at the Boom booth, like all 4 days, 5 days, whatever it was. Did a bunch of interviews. Although actually I think I only did like 2 interviews for Power Rangers, and I don't know that they're live yet, but there's one that should be a lot of fun. It's a bit of a deep dive with Bleeding Cool.
Oh, cool.
And then and then there was the panel, which was a blast. Got to talk about some of the upcoming stuff. People from Saban hooked everyone up that was at the panel with like all sorts of swag and gear and stuff.
That's nice.
They gave me a Legacy Megazord. Thunder Megazord. Is that out yet?
Yeah.
The gold and black Thunder Megazord.
No, I think. Do they have a gold and black Thunder Megazord? They might.
It was some sort of Legacy Megazord. And the reason I don't know what it was is because I promptly forgot it under the panel table.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was like a San Diego exclusive, and I felt like a total idiot. And one of my friends went back to get it, and I guess Yoshi grabbed it.
He's such a good guy.
Well, he hasn't contacted me to say he has.
Okay, maybe he isn't.
No. He either grabbed it and gave it to someone, or someone grabbed it and gave it to him. I'm not really sure to hold on to, and I haven't connected with who has it yet. But yeah, it was a good time, and we got to talk a little about just kind of what the book is and what I'm trying to do and with it, and it's an experience. All these like panels are an interesting environment because I think now people are starting to become aware that there is a book, like Power Rangers fans, that there is a book. But like we've done some panels before, like at Seattle, where like the people in the audience had no idea there was even a comic. You know, at WonderCon too, there were a lot of people that were just there because they were Power Rangers fans and they saw it was a Power Rangers panel, even though it was actually, you know, it was a panel for the comic. So getting an opportunity to kind of like repitch what the series is and why we're doing it and what makes it different and what we're looking to explore in it is always fun, and it kind of helps me to kind of, you know, just refresh and remember why I'm writing the book and, you know, what interested me in the project in the first place, and kind of keeps me on point, you know. Totally. So yeah, all in all, it was a good time, and I'm literally wearing a T-shirt, Power Rangers T-shirt, right now, because it was the only thing that was clean, from the show, and it's the cover for the trade paperback that's not out yet. But it's the cover that Goni illustrated. You can see it. I mean, the cover is live. It's been solicited. It's on Amazon and everything. But they turned that into a T-shirt in like the whole cover image is inside a diamond shape. It's pretty awesome. So I would like to say that I wore it in anticipation of today's podcast, but the truth is that I didn't actually connect the two. It was a total coincidence.
Well, Michael's wearing a Power Rangers shirt right now as well. I think that's probably less of a coincidence.
I mean, I've got like 3 Power Rangers T-shirts in my 7 T-shirt rotation. So.
My 7 T-shirt rotation. Yeah.
Odds are pretty good if you're getting one then.
Yeah, 1 in 2 more or less.
Yeah.
All right, will we move on to issue 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So, Kyle, I guess before we get into the specifics, this is a breather from the regular arc. You've got a different artist, Tony Silas, who you've worked with before. What was kind of the driver behind like this single issue being a bit of something different?
Well, there were a couple factors with this one. The first was that just from a scheduling standpoint, we burned all of our lead time in the early putting together like the first issue, maybe the first 2 issues. Mm-hmm. And so Hendry was really behind the 8 ball. And that was not his fault by any stretch of the imagination. It was more just getting a book up and running like this and the approvals process with Saban. And they've never really done a book like this. I've kind of talked about that a little before.
Yep.
So just getting them on the same page with like, no guys, like we're doing one of these every month, you know, like every month. It has to go to the printer every 4 weeks, you know. So that means like approvals on storylines and approvals on scripts and then approvals on art, you know, every step of the art process. Like that all it has to be a well-oiled machine, otherwise you fall behind.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what happened with the first couple issues. And so we wanted to design a fill-in in between arcs that could work both from a scheduling standpoint to give Hendry a chance to catch his breath and jump ahead to the next main part of the story. But also, I wanted to use it as an interstitial to kind of set up some character dynamics that might recontextualize some of the things that we've seen in the first arc, mm-hmm. And then kind of tee up some things that we might be seeing in the next arc. And I'm pretty happy with how that kind of process came about and you know, where we landed with this issue. And it gave me an opportunity to work with Tony Silas again, who's he's awesome. There's no other way to describe him. He's just a baller, man. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
We did 25, maybe 30. No, we probably did like 30 chapters of Batman Beyond together, maybe more. Because I think we did 40 chapters on the series in general, but like probably 10 of those were drawn by another artist. Mm-hmm. So yeah, at least 30 chapters we did together. So we've worked together a lot. So the opportunity to jam on something, you know, again, was pretty awesome. And I think you can see in the style, just in the pages here, like it's a different look for Power Rangers.
Yeah.
But it's super kinetic. It's very dynamic. and the colorist, this was my first time working with this colorist. I'm actually not sure who it is, but
Brian Valenza.
Brian, okay.
Yeah.
Brian just does a ridiculous job over Tony. I've seen a couple different colorists work over Tony over the years, and one of my favorites is a gentleman named Emilio Lopez, and Brian kind of reminds me he has a similar kind of approach to Tony's pages that Emilio took, which is a little bit more on the kind of anime side where the cuts it's less cut and gradients. It's more like, especially in the rendering on the faces and clothes and stuff, it's more like palette selections for highlights and just different shadows and everything are closer to the highlights, so it's not as contrasty on the faces, but I think that's how I would describe it. But yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the best looking issues we've done.
Yeah, I guess because you've worked with Tony before, but it really feels like there was no time spent figuring out how to work together. It all holds together so well.
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing, and I'm sure we'll get to this as we get into the actual pages, but Tony has this habit of adding panels. And on Batman Beyond, it was a digital first comic, which meant it was a standard sized comic page, but then the page was split in half. And so then the top half was a digital, like a tablet screen, and the bottom half was a tablet screen. So I approached it where I was writing basically 2 pages per page.
Yep.
And when they would be put together as one printed page, they'd look really dense. Like there were a lot of panels, a lot of 9-panel pages. Tony then would go crazy, and he'd start adding little panels here and there in addition to the 9 panels. So it would turn into like 15-panel pages sometimes. So on this, I told him, like, dude, I'm writing you like a really, like, there are splash pages in this. Like, we never had splash pages in Batman Beyond. It's like, I'm doing a lot of like 4-panel pages. I've got some 3-panel pages. It's going to be awesome, dude. And he started sending layouts back. And those 3-panel pages would turn into 5-panel pages, and those 4-panel pages would turn into 7-panel pages. And he just creates more work for himself. But, I mean, it all works.
Yeah, you can't argue with how it came out.
Oh, yeah. And we've done enough together that, that stuff doesn't faze me. Like, I was able to go in and, I rewrote dialogue and reworked some balloons to better take advantage of the art.
Yeah.
And, this is also the first issue where I kind of took my foot off the throttle a little bit, and I let it I eased up a bit. And so the issue, what I mean by that is, like, there aren't a lot of sound effects in the issue. I let the action kind of speak for itself. It's just I think it's a cleaner reading experience. It's a much I think it flows a lot better. I think this is the first issue that really flows quite well. And issue 6, I just did the proof on that yesterday, and that's I had a similar approach on that. And I think that with Hendry is the best issue we've done. I think it's the one that flows the best. And I tend to, I think I've talked about this before, but like I have this kind of bad habit, I think, of being a little too restrictive in my first arc, and my first arcs on books where I tend to, I don't want to say overwrite, but I'm afraid of letting things just kind of play in the art. It usually takes me a couple of issues to kind of get my feet under me and feel a little more confident in basically backing off. But the result, when I'm able to finally get to that place, is I think much better. I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. So, yeah,
I found it to be a very fast-paced read, which is interesting because there's a lot of sort of quieter character moments, but it still just moves at such a fast clip.
Yeah.
All right, well, how about we get into the nitty-gritty of it and go page by page, as is our want.
Sure.
So we start in Italy, which is... Oh, we talked a little bit last week about moving outside of the realm of Angel Grove. We got a little bit of San Francisco. And now we're international, which is like an even bigger jump. And I noticed some people asking you on Twitter about what was the thought process in sort of getting outside of Angel Grove in the first instance, but then taking it international, especially by issue 5. Seems like a big leap.
Yeah. Well, and did you guys... I don't know if you saw, but I asked earlier today on Twitter if anyone had any questions before we recorded.
Yeah.
Because you are better at doing our podcast than we are.
Well, he's a co-host now. He's got responsibilities.
Do you happen to snag those, or do you have them?
I have them open in front of me, yes.
Awesome. Because I think that'd be fun to kind of go through later.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think we're not, again, playing to the strengths of the medium that we're working in here. Like, we're not restricted by everything needing to be either Angel Grove, California, or existing, Japanese footage that felt non-specific, i.e. the docks or quarries. I just think we can open it up into the real world a bit more, and this was the first opportunity that I really had to do that. San Francisco was originally supposed to be Seattle, and then I couldn't make the choreography work as far as like where the Dragon Zord is, and then how it's going to get to Seattle, and how it became a mess. So I just kept it more like I kept it in San Francisco, which is basically kitty corner to my Angel Grove, basically like the books version of Angel Grove. And this was an issue where I felt like, especially going forward into the next arc, where spoiler alert, the threat gets bigger, possibly on a global scale. I wanted to kind of plant those seeds here that, hey, not everything has to be contained to California or this one specific part of California. The idea, we've been hinting at that throughout the series. The idea that Bulk and Skull have this YouTube channel with 400,000 subscribers or whatever the number is, kind of speaks to that. And there have been other little bits kind of throughout that set up the idea that, like, hey, this isn't all going to just be contained in Angel Grove. But this is like the first example of us being able to do something actionable like that or with that. So yeah, and then it was a whole conversation about which country we could set it in, and which one made kind of the most sense. And I had it set somewhere else originally. I don't remember where, but oh, that's right. I had it in Moscow originally, and then I don't remember why, but it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to do something like, giant bears with laser axes trying to chop down the Kremlin.
Oh.
And I don't know why I don't remember why we moved away from that, but a Vitruvian man shooting crossbow arrows into the palazzo. It's 6 on one hand, half dozen on the other, right?
Yeah, I think either would have been a good decisions, and I'm pretty happy with where we landed, to be honest. But before the Vitruvian man shows up, we have the Italian Prime Minister doing what is perhaps the silliest thing a world leader can do, and that is antagonizing the Moon Witch.
Right?
I love the look on Rita's face in this panel. It completely sells that emotion of like, oh, okay, if you'd like to test me, let's go. The glint in her eyes is amazing. I think, Tony's awesome, and I think that panel in particular, I love.
Yeah, the sentence that she would say on the show is like, "Oh, you like this, do you? Well, how about a giant evil this?"
Yep.
But this gets that across without her needing to say that.
Yes.
So let's talk about, is this your first splash page in 6 issues or 5 issues of the comic?
I
feel like there haven't been many. If there have, I'd have to go back and actually count.
Yeah, there haven't been. Space has been at a premium.
Yep.
And that's something I'm trying to change, actually. Issue 6 has 2 splash pages in it. 7 has a big splash page, a couple big splash pages. Well, actually, one might end up with an inset panel. Now that I think about it, but yeah, it's just about, like I said, it's about opening things up a little bit more and letting things breathe. It's tough in 20 pages. A couple years ago, really like in 2010, Marvel and DC shifted away from 22-page comics to 20-page comics.
Yep.
And that's what this is, a 20-page comic. But basically, like, the trend in the industry shifted from 22 to 20, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Like, it's an entire scene, or it's 2 killer splash pages that, again, open things up a bit. Mm-hmm. I'm doing a project right now, and it was a 20-page per issue comic, and we just got word back after the first issue was done that they're actually going to change it to 22 pages. And so we have these 2 extra pages that we get to go into the issue and figure out, like, how to use, and it's fantastic. Like, it's extra real estate. I was able to extend this really cool, like, action sequence, and then I turned the other page, may have turned into a splash. I don't remember. I have to look, but yeah, like, and then future issues going forward, it's the same thing. Like, I've already written a couple of the scripts, and so it's like, oh man, like, extra real estate. Let me go figure out where I can best utilize this. And so just finding opportunities and trying to be more aware of like, kind of how dense the Power Rangers book has been to this point. That's kind of my focus going forward. Like, I want to create opportunities to open it up for Hendry, and in this case, Tony was the first person I was able to do it for. But that's going to be a trend going forward that we'll be embracing more and more.
And I think this is a perfect use of that first splash, to do a giant naked Vitruvian man with 2 swords and a crossbow just attacking Italy.
When one sword's not enough.
Yeah, you've got 4 arms.
I will say, I think that, and I'm probably putting too much thought into this, but that's the ideal weapon sort of fit out for a medieval guy with 4 arms. Because you have 2 swords, which is like, of course you want 2 swords. Any more than 2 swords is probably just going to be getting in your own way. But using those other 2 hands to hold a projectile weapon, I think that makes perfect sense to me.
I'll tell you where this came from. I wanted a monster that spoke to Italy, or was specific to Italy, right?
Yep.
And the idea of a spaghetti monster wasn't appealing to me. And on top of that, like, I didn't want to fall into like terrible cliches either, and so but I don't know, at a certain point it was like, oh well, that would be really creepy, Vitruvian man. And I think where I kind of came to that from was I did this short film last year called The Shadow Hours, and the main actor in that is a gentleman named Tom Riley, who played Leonardo da Vinci on the show Da Vinci's Demons, which was a show on Stars in the U.S. and then I think on the BBC in the UK. But anyway, it's kind of like it's a Renaissance kind of look at Leonardo da Vinci as like an action hero. Like, it's awesome. It was run by David Goyer, and he is a big sword fighter in the show, and like double swords, and he invents crossbows and things like that
now.
And so I just thought, like, well, you know what? This would be a fun inside nod. I actually haven't shown Tom this yet. I should.
You should, yeah.
I should send this to him. But yes, Tom Riley is to thank for the giant naked Vitruvian man with double swords and a crossbow.
Yeah. Well, then I feel like I owe him a whole lot. So now we've got the Vitruvian man on the 3rd page. busting into the building. And I like the idea that he's giant, so his crossbow bolts would be giant and just wreck shit in a building, taking out the supports of a building. Because in my mind, the physics of it is so... Because it'd still be wood, but when you've got wood that big...
It's like a tree.
It's like a tree, exactly. But yeah, awesome action scenes with what I didn't realize at the time until we get to a bit later in the issue is quotes from Da Vinci.
Yep.
Did you have to go looking for those, Kyle, or do those all just sit front of mind all the time in your life?
Oh yeah. No, I'm like fucking Encyclopedia Britannica when it comes to Da Vinci quotes. No, surprise. I don't know any Da Vinci quotes. So what happened was the art started to come back, and even when I wrote it, like giant four-arm, four-legged naked Vitruvian man, I knew that's going to be a really hard thing to pull off in a way that, like, you look at it visually and you go, oh yeah, it's the Vitruvian man drawing come to life. Yeah, how do you not see that? And sure enough, like, when Tony started sending layouts back, he kind of looks like, he just looks like a giant, like, four-armed naked dude. And so I was concerned, like, okay, it needs something extra because it's not really reading, or I was worried it wasn't reading as a Vitruvian man.
Yep.
And especially because he's so humanoid, I was like, well, he should be talking. What is he going to say? And so that kind of led me down a really strange, weird path of, like, pulling Da Vinci quotes. Like, what if he just speaks in stock quotes? Which then led me down the path of, like, where am I going to find Da Vinci quotes? Which then led me down the path of, am I really going to have to source all these Da Vinci quotes? Because, like, I want to find them online. Which then led me down the path of, well, what if that's where they found the Da Vinci quotes that he uses? And so it was just one slippery slope leading to the next that somehow landed on a bunch of feathers. I don't know. Like, I kind of... Sorry, I got into that metaphor and I kind of lost it. But yeah, it's I don't know. I had a lot of fun, let me tell you, going through and mapping Da Vinci quotes
to the situation.
Yeah, My Soul Aches is a personal favorite. I thought I was learning to live, but I was only learning to die after Megazord cuts him in half. Is also a personal favorite.
Yep.
So there you go. Yeah,
that's definitely a happy accident, I think. And I love, just from a world building standpoint, the idea of the moon monsters, when they're really taxed and they need to get a monster out the door, they just fall back on Google like everybody else does. It's like they just hack it out.
I mean, they could have used Bing for all we know.
Well, that's true. Look, I don't want to put that.
No one uses Bing.
Well, they're evil, Michael.
You don't think Squat might use Bing over Google?
Okay, Squat might use Bing. Squat might be the only person who uses Bing.
That's why they're keeping Bing running, is for Squat.
They're like, it's weird. The data shows that all the searches are happening on the moon. That can't be. I don't even know why we have a system that allows us to detect things on the moon.
Actually, little known fact, that's actually what Bing was built for, was for moon-based search queries.
Oh, well, that explains so much.
And why it works so poorly here on Earth?
Yeah, because
exactly.
It's designed to be on the moon.
Yeah. Well, that makes
Neil Armstrong can get it to work.
Is Bing still a thing, or did I just make a 2009 reference?
I feel like it is.
I think it's still a
The
thing.
last time I saw it was in the Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Oh, it's still there.
It's still there? Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Who makes it? Does Microsoft make it?
Microsoft, yeah. Which is why it's still around.
They just made a fucking $1 billion just based on us talking about it.
A bunch of people are like, oh, I'm going to use Bing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, I think Microsoft making it is the reason why when you try and search something on an Xbox, you have to use Bing.
Ah,
They
right.
mandated it. Yeah. Anyway, enough talking about the horrors that is Bing. On the next page, the Megazord lunges into frame, which I think is an awesome hero shot. And I love the idea of the Megazord. Like, it's humanoid, right? So it should be able to sprint. We don't ever see it in the show because it's so cumbersome. But the idea of it sprinting in to save the day sword first, I really enjoy, personally. And then we get an awesome scene between the Megazord and the giant Vitruvian man, just breaking shit, generally.
Yep.
As big monster fights should do.
Doing some punching.
Yep. With some fantastic Da Vinci coats, just to spice it up a little bit. So we've also got the scene where Jason is piloting the Megazord, but then leaps out to take on the Vitruvian man as just a ranger with his sword. And I love the sense of scale in that scene as well. He's lunging the sword into his chest there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was supposed to teleport. It may have been a mistake, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Panel 5, he was supposed to be teleporting in, like phasing in.
Right. Yep.
But, I mean, the leaping kind... Well, actually... I'm going to go with he's still teleporting. We just didn't see him phasing, because I don't know how the mechanics of getting there in time...
Are you saying there's no ejector seat in the Megazord?
What's that?
Are you saying there's no ejector seat in the Megazord? I'm sure they could just hit a button.
There is now.
Yeah.
There is.
I mean, yeah, I certainly am open to the idea that he's just teleported off screen and then he's jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, which is the sort of thing that they should do all the time. Do you, I guess this is kind of a logistics question that you might not have thought about. When Jason isn't piloting the Megazord, is there, like, can the rest of the 4 of them, they're fine to do it, that doesn't need all 5 of them?
Yeah, so I have thought about that because there's a line on page, what page is that? Where is it? Oh, when the Megazord first shows up.
Yep.
And Jason says, Trini, get the hand gyros ready. We're going to need... And she says, on your 3, he's coming back. Like, to me, I like the idea is, like, each of them controls a different kind of aspect of the Megazord, right? And so, like, Trini is basically piloting the fists. So I think, yeah, I mean, as you can see, like, Zach was able to take over, but what we don't know, and to be honest, I don't have an answer for, right, like, off the top of my head, is what system was Zach neglecting when he took control of the Megas, like the either the swiping or the, like, what did he take over that Jason was doing that he then had to, like, what was his post that he's no longer, operating?
I mean, for all we know, he set whatever he had to do at his post and had just enough time to jump over and take the reins in the pilot seat, I guess.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I would have thought of that. That's definitely the better answer.
There we go.
That's fine.
So we've got Jason lunging his sword in, and then the fantastic line, "My soul aches."
I mean, this is like, Eisner Award-winning material. Like, I don't want to jinx it, guys, but...
Yeah, I definitely think it should be entered at very least.
Yeah, best use of Da Vinci quotes in a Power Rangers comic.
That should be its own award show. It doesn't even need to be
you
a category at the
definitely
Eisners.
be nominated at the very least. I don't know if they're going to do something maybe over in the Pink comic with Da Vinci quotes as well that you might be in competition with, but I feel like you'd be definitely, top nominee.
So we have Jason, after hitting the Vitruvian man, heading down to grab the Italian Prime Minister and protect him. Unfortunately, it looks like the Vitruvian man is about to drop the sword on both of them until the Megazord comes in, saves the day with, just slashes him, like, I don't know if in half is quite right. It takes a lot out of the chest there. That's a graphic slash.
Yes.
But yeah, another awesome hero shot. Yeah, and then the day is saved, and we see everyone hero worshipping the Red Ranger, and Zach walking away with a steely look in his eyes, I guess I'd say. Is that how you describe that, Michael?
Yeah, I have a question actually about that last panel in particular. The effect that Tony has gone for is like a kind of like your classic spider sense effect, where it's half helmet, half face. Was that in the script, or was that an artistic decision?
Oh no, that's that is in the script, but it wasn't in the original script. So in the original script, it was him saying, like, I think Kim says something like, hey, you know, what did she say? Something about, like, you know, seriously, those are some pretty killer moves, right? And he was like, yeah, definitely, killer moves. And he kind of walks away on his own.
Yep.
And either in the layout stage or in the second draft of the script, at some point we started having the conversation about, like, you know, it'd actually be cool if we kind of break the rules a little and see Zach's face. And so, yeah, the classic kind of Spider-Man Spidey sense kind of effect was what we came up with, and I love it.
Yeah, it works.
So I mean, Tony absolutely nails it. Yeah.
Yeah. Then on the next page, we are on the moon, and we see Rita witnessing the scene through a viewing globe of sorts, I suppose. And I love Rita has a menace to her that was never on the show, and just taking the pupils out of Rita's eyes is terrifying, like properly terrifying. So we've got Goldar coming in and sort of trying to make excuses for why the monster didn't work, and Rita is clearly not interested in it at all. But I like the idea of Goldar being the one who has to sort of come in and try and downplay the failure and make excuses and just be the sycophanty sort of guy. Is that something that you think Goldar... Is Goldar that sort of sycophanty second-in-command guy all the time? Or is that just because he is worried he's going to get in shit, basically, for the failure, do you think?
It's a good question. I think this is not the first time they've had a conversation like this.
Yeah, sure.
And I think, without getting too spoilery, I think there are some things coming up in issue 7 that may shed a little bit more light on this. You know, we teased in issue, what was it, 3? Goldar chained to the floor, and feeling like he let, you know, Empress Rita down. That's a thread that we'll be continuing to develop and explore. So I don't want to say too much.
Sure, yeah.
At this point, but you raise a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, on the next page, we've got Zach walking down the street, looking moody, and getting set upon.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, set upon by putties, and once again, they look so much more terrifying than they ever did in the show. And I love the idea that they come at you sort of from the air, limbs everywhere, and looking like just these things that could just envelope you, which is basically what they do. Zach obviously gets a few good hits in, but is just overwhelmed. And we get what may be one of the few badass Goldar moments in Power Rangers history ever. He's not exactly known for being a cool dude, but that's a pretty high watermark moment for Goldar, I think, just there at the end of that page.
Where he stands there,
like
silently, like a badass.
Yeah, I think because whenever he talks, nothing good happens.
Matt really does not like Goldar, I think.
I like to not like Goldar. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not like I think he's a bad character. I just think he's...
Sure. I mean, yeah. He also, you know, he always looks more imposing when he has his wings.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, who doesn't love those wings?
I might be saying something there, but I might not be saying something there about previous issues and other times we've seen Goldar.
Yeah, there may be some differences there that you could draw comparisons.
I'm kind of curious, Kyle. You've spoken about how Tony is a fan of adding panels to a page. Was this one of those times? Because I can kind of imagine a version of this page that is maybe a little lighter. Was this one of those pages?
Yeah, but this was a page that Saban really wanted to see more of an action beat on as well.
Yep.
Because originally what it was the putties show up and Zach gets ready to fight him or to call for help, and Goldar knocks him out from behind. Mm-hmm. So there's no fight. It's just they show up, and they were like a distraction so Goldar could show up behind Zach and knock him out.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, can we see him? I think their note was like, let's see him hold his own, like really make a go of it. And it's still in the script was Goldar knocking him out. And then Tony did the layouts, and it's the putties kind of overpowering him, and so that's what we ended up going with. But it looks awesome, and it wasn't something that was like it wasn't a big enough deal to me to warrant changing or anything like that. So yeah, I'm glad that in spite of that, Goldar still has, in your estimation, a high watermark moment here.
Absolutely, like he can certainly use them. So next page, we are in the dungeon, which one of my favorite Power Rangers locations, personally, and we see Zach not chained to the floor, but certainly chained and sitting on the floor in a way that kind of evokes the first time we saw Goldar in the series.
Right.
And Rita comes in and says that she comes in peace, which is a strange thing to see coming out of the mouth of the Scary Moon Witch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe the Scary Moon Witch just gets a bad rap. I mean, that was the whole approach.
Well, yeah, I feel like if it was a bad rap, she wouldn't be wearing that hat. I don't think good people wear hats like that. I mean, I don't want to.
They just wear hats like that where she's from.
Yeah,
that's true. Maybe I'm being insensitive.
Moonia. That needs a rewrite. We'll move on.
So Rita frees Zach from his bonds and offers to show him something, which you can see from the look in his eyes in that second last panel of the second page here that he is a little intrigued. So he walks with Rita deep into the Moon Palace, and I like seeing corridors in the Moon Palace, and I guess that's just the product of coming from a TV show with very small budget and small sets.
Yep.
But seeing corridors makes me strangely happy. And seeing Finster sitting at a desk working on monsters as well, in what is just kind of like a smaller detail off to the side of the panel, is so cool. Was that in the script, Kyle?
Yeah, it was basically me describing my life, set off to the side in a corner, told to keep typing. I'm basically the Finster of comics.
Well, I look forward to reading
most of us that make comics are the Finsters of our the Finsters of comics. There are a lot of us.
I look forward to reading a lot more into Finster as we go on and see so what is Kyle saying about himself in this?
It's basically just going to be like all the sad shit in my life. It's just I'm just going to take out on Finster.
Poor Finster.
Is it Finster or Fenster?
Finster.
It's Finster. Because I always whatever it is, I always write it the other way, and Saban always writes back. And they're like, it's whatever it's Finster.
It's Finster. Yeah.
Say I'll remember it next time. Whatever, we'll find and replace it. Not a big deal. And then inevitably the next issue, I just don't do it right. I'm like, no, it's Fenster. I'm sure that's what they said this time. But I also confuse it with. I confuse him with Stephen Baldwin from The Usual Suspects. So one of them is Finster and the other is Fenster. I guess Suspects is Fenster, is what you're saying.
Okay, so if we ever see Stephen Baldwin show up in the comic, we'll know what went wrong.
Yeah, basically I think that's probably what Saban is terrified of. Is like, if I spell it, if we keep Fenster in the book, whoever's drawing it is just gonna, oh well, he must mean Stephen Baldwin, and it will be Stephen Baldwin building monsters. Which, by the way, let's just pause and reflect on what amazing visuals that would create for a second.
I think we should probably write that one down. And, I mean, I'm sure that his fees wouldn't be that high. I feel like you could get him.
Yeah. I mean, at least a likeness.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got a Snickers bar I can part with. I'm sure.
There you go. I think that and maybe like a chocolate milk, I think it'd be golden.
Yeah.
That feels mean. Okay. We also have a small beat here of I've forgotten. I've had a mind blank on the names.
Which
those
Squad
two.
and Baboo?
Thank you, Michael. Squad and Baboo, not those two.
How long have you been doing this podcast for, mate?
Too long, I think, is the answer.
Fair enough. Yep.
So Squat and Babu are fighting over a toy, and Rita has to step in and basically discipline them. Without even breaking her stride in what she's saying to Zach, which I love. Like, this is such a everyday thing for her that she doesn't even break conversation to blast them with her magic wand. I love that.
And I'm actually not sure what that toy is, or if it's
definitely some sort of horrifying cat. With,
I'm
like,
not sure it's a
huge claws.
toy now that I'm looking at it. Like,
oh God!
Yeah, okay. Ooh, I didn't consider that.
I think I wrote a teddy bear, but maybe that's. I mean, I think what Tony came up with is way better.
I like the idea that they just stole a possum or something.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Is that one of their brothers? Like, I don't know. Like,
Oh God.
Oh Jesus! This has become so horrifying retroactively. Oh God! And Rita just
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. That's a thought that's going to fester. Moving on.
Finster.
Ah,
Hey. Before we kind of move on to the next segment, I have a question that I imagine the actual and answer to it would be pretty spoilery. So I'm just going to kind of generally hint, and you can generally hint back. Goldar kind of does a hint towards the idea that maybe there's something in the Rita-Zordon relationship that we're not necessarily privy to. There's backstory, or there's, events in the past. Is that something that you are interested in exploring?
Yes.
Okay. That's what
but I don't like telling origin stories or backstory stories or fill-in continuity stories just for the sake of explaining some nuance of canon. Or something like that. Like, to me, that's a bullshit reason for a story. Like, there has to be a story where exploring that stuff is a component of it, and it's done to aid. It's done to aid and support the main story, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So, like, for example, like in Batman Beyond, there was some stuff that I wanted to explore with Dick, Bruce, and Barbara's relationship. But to just go and tell that story of what happened between them, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever, is not a reason to do it.
Yeah.
But how those revelations impact and influenced Terry's relationship with Bruce was a reason to explore that stuff.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is that I am interested in exploring that stuff and the early days and everything else, but it has to be in support of something bigger. It won't just be like, I'm out of ideas, guys. Like, hey, let's go tell the origin of Rita, Like, that's to me is like, that's kind of, it's hackish, to be honest. Like, it's low, you know what? Hackish isn't the right word. I'm gonna walk that back. It's low-hanging fruit. So like I remember Dan DiDio at DC telling me one time, like, if I had $1 for every time someone pitched me telling the story about the gun that killed Bruce Wayne's parents and like what happened to that gun and how it, whatever. He's like, I wouldn't have to work at DC. Like I'd be very rich, And at the time, I remember thinking, like, well, but you could do like a Red Violin kind of story about the gun, but then it's a story about a gun, like it's not. And I quickly realized, like, no, he's totally right. Like that's not. I don't know. It's a low hanging fruit idea to me, but at the same time, like you look at something like the Red Violin, and I think where that movie and where that story works is that all the stuff about the violin ties back to his the guy who crafted the violin, the artisan's relationship with his wife, even as the violin travels through hundreds of years. Have you seen the movie? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't, but it sounds good.
You should check it out. It's awesome. Although I just rewatched it like a year ago, and it doesn't hold up as well as I remember it holding up, but it's still like it's got some pretty great stuff in it, and yeah, it just follows this one violin that was crafted by like a Stradivarius of the time in like the 1700s, and it's this violin that's varnished with this red glaze, this red varnish, and it creates like the most haunting sound, and everyone who plays it is kind of transfixed by it, and it may or may not ruin them, but they're incredible on it, right?
Yeah.
And so the score is by John Corigliano, who's one of my favorite composers. He's only done like 3 movies, and he's been nominated for Oscars for 2 of them, right? Like he's got a great track record. Like he taught Elliot Goldenthal. He was a student of Corigliano's, and anyway, he's like kind of one of our masters of the 21st century, and before, really, like masters of the 20th century as well. And anyway, so this I don't know which came first, if he had written the Red Violin as a concert piece and then the film happened and they merged them, or if he wrote it for the film. I'm actually not sure, but like Joshua Bell does all the violin solos, and it's just it's worth watching the movie alone just to hear his stuff. Anyway, sorry, I've totally tangented.
Oh no, like I'm now sold on the Red Violin, so at least for me, it wasn't a waste of time. Yeah, so I think
what were we talking about? I don't remember.
we were talking about the backstory that Goldar alludes to.
Oh yeah.
And you're explaining why you shouldn't just fill in continuity for the sake of it, basically, which I think is kind of the trap sometimes with material that's adapted from other sort of forms. Is you just get into like, let's tell the origin story of this thing, and I feel like that may have been, not to throw stones, but where previous Power Rangers series have slipped up a little bit. I mean, one of a few ways. But it'd be sort of like, remember the Rad Bug? Look, the Rad Bug's back. Let's talk about the Rad Bug a little bit.
I do like the Rad Bug.
I do too, but again, for the sake of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place for some of that stuff, but I just think you have to be smart about it. Like, you don't want to... This speaks to the point that we've talked about before when I took on the book. Like, I didn't want to do a nostalgia book. Like, this isn't... I don't want to do, like, a greatest hits. Like, I want to do something new. Like, I want to take the concept and explore it in a different way and push it forward. And some of that is... If there are ways to introduce nuggets and ideas and threads from the past that recontextualize certain things, great. I'm all for it, But, like, I'm not writing the book to do just kind of a straight kind of translation of the show to then go answer continuity questions, Because, like, more and more, like, when you do stuff like that, you're really tying your work into the original material.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that, except that that's not what we're really doing in the book. Especially as the next couple of issues come out, people are going to really start to see, like, Oh yeah, no, we're definitely doing our own thing. This isn't just. We've said this for every episode, but like, this is not just lost episodes from the show. Like, this is its own thing. It's its own timeline.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to start to see what I mean by that very soon here.
I feel like when you say very soon, you could even apply that to the very next page.
Yeah, that seems like a great time to segue into what's about to happen, which is Rita showing Zach a vision of himself as the Green Ranger.
Yes. that did happen.
Sorry, we can.
No, you go ahead.
I think what I love about this so much is that we know what that costume means. Zach doesn't necessarily. So the context we're bringing to it is different to the context he's bringing to it.
You know what? Actually, this is it's really interesting because this actually speaks. I think I just want to say before I forget. Like, this actually speaks to what we were just discussing. Where we went back, and this issue is could technically be construed as an origin issue, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going back, and we're showing, oh my gosh, Zach actually knew about the Green Ranger before Tommy showed up, and he was offered it first. Oh my gosh, wow, they're doing, like, it's an origin thing, right? Mm-hmm. Except that the reason that it's here, and the reason I'm exploring it, is to recontextualize Zach's dynamic in the first 4 issues that took place before this, and also to set up some stuff for issues 6 through 9. So it's being done. It's not being done just for the sake of doing it. It's being done to add some different perspective and, again, context to Zach within our story, right? Like, it's being done to support what his story is, as opposed to like just being done because it's a cool or a different origin thing, if that makes sense.
100%. And like, I'm not even sure necessarily that I'd call it an origin, because there's not an explanation, at least any further than what the show offers, as to the nature of the green power coin. It's not like we see Rita in there forging the coin or anything like that. It's really just about reframing the idea of what it means to be a Green Ranger. And
right, because everyone knows that Rita doesn't forge the coin. She has Stephen Baldwin do it.
Exactly right. I mean, you've got to get that guy to work. You can't spend all of his time making monsters for you. He's got to earn that Snickers bar.
Yeah, that might be the best out of context tweet from this recording. Stephen Baldwin's got to earn that Snickers bar.
If we named episodes after quotes, I think that'd be a good one. Zach has seen this vision of what could be, and he's clearly tempted, but wants to know the catch. And Rita basically says, look, there's no catch. Once the world is protected, I suppose I'd say, then he'd be able to return to his friends and live the life he wanted all along. So, in your mind, Kyle, is Rita offering Zach the chance to make the world safe through a sort of stronger, more military means, perhaps, than the Power Rangers?
Yes.
Yep. Is that like, we don't want to say too much at this point sort of situation?
Yeah, I think this is not like reinventing the wheel stuff or some grand epiphany or anything, but like, the best villains are the ones who are right.
Yep.
Or at least there's a version of what they're saying or what they're about that's right, that has merit. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I find the Rita who is a little bit misunderstood, as opposed to like just mad with power, more interesting. So I do think, while there are some promises being made to Zach here, I think you do have to take what she's saying with a grain of salt, especially based on like what we know she does after this, as far as like brainwashing Tommy and stuff like that.
Certainly. Yep.
But Yeah, I mean, I would actually be really interested to see what a world conquered by Rita would look like. You know, like, would it be better? I don't know. Like, would we all have health care? Maybe. I mean, you know, like, probably some perks. I don't know.
I love the idea too, and this might be my favorite part of the whole issue, is that there's a spectrum of beliefs of how much someone with power should intervene in situations. And Zach, from the looks of things, is definitely closer to Rita on that spectrum, and obviously not enough to throw in with her, but seeing that bubble underneath the surface, and later when he sort of presents that to Zordon, and Zordon almost not knowing how to react, is fascinating to me, because now there's people on the team with different ideas about what the Power Rangers even could be fundamentally. So yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about that. I guess that's my point there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad it landed for you.
So I guess before we turn the page, Zach, like, he doesn't say that he's agreeing with Rita. What he says is, like, we should be doing more. And we see that, you know, when we turn kind of later into the issue, he does, like, he's not saying we should take over the world. He's just saying, like, we've got to step it up. In your mind, is Zach tempted by the idea, or is he always kind of thinking, like, she's not wrong, but...
Sorry, say that. Can you say that one more time?
Is there a version of Zach in your kind of conception of him who would have said, yes, let's do this? Or was Zach always just swayed more towards the idea of intervening, but would never have gone over to Rita's side?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the hard parts about what Rita's offering, as far as, like, trying to create a scenario where Zach would say yes, is that there is, like, there's no version of what she's offering that doesn't involve, like, authoritarian rule, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like, there's no version that doesn't involve Zach turning against his friends, and, like, people probably getting hurt as he helps Rita kind of go on her conquest, you know? And it's an ends justify the means kind of argument. Like, things be better after that. Well, you know, we won't know. I think there are things. I think Zach is being truthful when he says to Zordon, like, look, there's stuff that she said that, like, she's got a point. You know, like, I was tempted. We should be doing more. Like, we should be ending some of the, you know, kind of pain and suffering in the world. Like, we have this great power, and you know, the way that she would go about it is not exactly something something Zach or any of the other Rangers could, you know, willfully sign up for. But yeah, it was something that I struggled with a little bit, because, like, early on when I outlined the issue, I wanted to try to build a scenario where you go, yeah, he should take this job, or yeah, I think he's going to take this gig, you know?
Yeah.
And the more that we spent on the issue, and, you know, there were a lot of rounds of notes on this one, just with Saban and with Boom, just iterating over kind of again and again on it. And as we got down the path as far as, like, what Saban was comfortable with us doing, it became clear that it was like, yeah, I don't know that I can actually pull that off, you know? And more importantly, it's as long as we have the moment in the end where Zach admits, like, hey, yeah, like, I was a little tempted. Like, all the other stuff, if it turns out that it's just him feigning interest in order to try to get the coin, like, that's totally fine, you know? Like, that was always a version that was in the back of my pocket.
Yeah.
Or in my back pocket. I was kind of trying to see if I could build a scenario where, even though he's going to reject it, because it would involve turning his friends, like, he would never take it. I like trying to build a scenario where you go, like, but could he? You know, was yeah. Anyway, I kind of got off track here, but yeah, I just don't see any way that he would. Like at the end of the day, like no matter what he's offering, I just don't see any way that he would.
So in the next,
but I will say real quick, though, and this is something that I'm sure we were probably going to get to anyway, but like, why Rita chose Zach is another interesting kind of topic, and it's something that someone asked about on Twitter earlier today, which we can get into in a little bit here. But like, that to me says more about, and that's really what we get out of this whole dynamic, this whole issue, as far as recontextualizing issues 1 through 4. Mm-hmm. Because I do think there's something to the idea of like, why did she choose me? Why did she think I would turn? You know,
Absolutely.
Like, there's some kind of, self-confidence issues there that may or may not bring up, and in a very natural, kind of normal way.
Yeah, I guess, and we'll have to see how things play out, obviously. But to my mind, there's really interesting comparisons between Tommy and Zach, and the fact that maybe their tensions come from the fact that they're both quite alike, and they both have those doubts about who they are and their moral fortitude, I suppose, and the fact that they just see what they don't like about themselves in each other and have that set each other off is, that's interesting. So the next scene is in the command center where Zach fesses up to everything that's happened, and Zordon asks Zach whether he's told anyone, and then basically asks Zach to keep it a secret for the time being, which I found really interesting. We've talked a bit on our regular show about how in the series Zordon could have been played as a sort of slightly more morally ambiguous Professor Xavier type character because he knows so much and says so little, but that's never really played out in any way. But here, should we be reading any sort of interesting intentions to Zordon keeping the information from the other Rangers?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I think, that's something that we're going to get into a bit down the line.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a very, it's a very valid point.
Mm-hmm. And then basically Zordon just reassures Zach that it's okay to have doubts and sort of stray a little bit, and it's really just because he cares so much that he got himself into this mess in the first place, and that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions about the Zordon team before we move on, Michael?
No, I think you covered kind of the big thing is why does Zordon not tell everyone?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, Zach, he definitely, he says he doesn't, it's not about being the leader. That's not something he's particularly cares about.
Yeah.
It's just about doing something. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to first go back and read the issues that have already come out and see kind of how that plays, and also see what happens going forward.
Yeah. But after all that sort of bubbling tension, we have a scene in a diner. Or is it someone... No, it's a diner.
It's a diner. It's the diner.
It's the diner, where Zach turns up to catch up with his friends. And it seems like they're able to sort of smooth things over for the time being between everyone, basically. And have Zach get reassured a little bit that he really is part of the team, which is nice. And then we have a final scene on the moon, and just as a quick point, I love seeing the exterior of the moon by different artists, because that's such an interesting looking building, and every time someone renders it, it comes out a little different and a little more awesome. Then we see the setup for what will happen to Tommy. We see him selected as a target, basically. And just as you think that it would end on that note, we get a little something else that adds mystery to it. They hear a voice from somewhere else that Rita can't see or identify in any way.
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, and that's an exciting tease for what's coming. Yeah.
And it's something that I cannot say anything about.
No, nor would we want you to.
Other than to read the next several issues.
I think that's a good recommendation either way. Yeah, so that's issue number 5. Which, awesome, I thought. Now, Michael, should we start talking through those Twitter questions?
Yeah, I do actually just have kind of one general question. Kyle, obviously, this is something we've seen, like, from issue 0 or issue 1, the idea that something's been up with Zach. Was that something that was in your first conversations about the series, or did that come in a little later as you were figuring out, like, what was going on?
Yeah, I think the idea that there was something up with Zach was something I pitched from the get-go, and it was something that I had one idea for, and then as we started getting into the series kind of organically, I came to this idea of Zach being tempted to be the Green Ranger, and that tied in to what my original idea was, which we haven't actually gotten to yet.
Sure.
So they are connected, but yeah, it was a little bit of an organic process. So
awesome. So Twitter questions. There was someone asking about, besides sort of a perceived jealousy of Jason in Zach, do you think there were any other reasons that Rita singled out Zach that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think I do think Zach is really talented, and I think he's good at this type of work. I think he's arguably Jason's best friend, but I don't know. I always think of these things. I think of these things in terms of like basketball analogies, which means nothing to you guys, I know. No. But James Harden played for Oklahoma City for a number of years alongside Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, and Harden ended up being traded to the Houston Rockets. Mm-hmm. And when he went to the Rockets, he blew up. Like, he became huge. Like, legitimate, arguably one of maybe the best, definitely in the top 5 two-way players in the NBA. Mm-hmm. And it took getting out of Oklahoma City for him to really establish himself. And so that's more the thing that I think Rita recognizes in Zach is like, hey, this dude has what it takes to be a number one, he just needs an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so that's really where that comes from. Whether there's more that motivated her or not is something that, you'll have to wait to read future issues to kind of find out, because I do think there's an aspect, it would only be natural if you're Zach to wonder if there was something else that attracted Rita to you. Whether there is or there isn't, it would only be natural to wonder, especially Absolutely. As a 16-year-old kid, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I think we sort of covered the rest of the Twitter questions, but I think next time we do this, we'll put out the call a bit earlier and take in a big pile of questions and have them answered on the show. So yeah, that's pretty much it for us this week. But
awesome.
Kyle, you do have coming up a screening of the short film you mentioned, The Shadow Hours.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It's something that I'm really looking forward to. Everyone involved in the film is looking forward to it. I've never actually had a film play at a festival before.
Yeah.
So this is like definitely a first, but something I'm really excited about. So I put together, a big website in the last couple days. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's interested, they can go to theshadowours.com. And so there's a clip there. There's screening information, a bunch of behind the scenes pictures, kind of stills from the movie. It's a project that I shot last year and finished in early January of this year, and then I've just been submitting it around. It started as like it's it's a proof of concept really for a feature, but I designed the short film to work and be its own thing as well. And so we've been submitting it to all these festivals, and like the first round we didn't get in for, but I was submitting it. It's a 19-minute short film, which is long for a short film. And the first round, like I don't know anything about the world of film festivals, and I assume it's political, just like anything.
It is actually.
So I submitted, to a bunch of festivals, but I really didn't have the submission process kind of dialed in and the necessary material to support the submission. I was just submitting the film, right? And it was always on the late deadline because that was the first round that I was submitting for. So it didn't get in, but the festival in LA, Holly Shorts, is the first one that we were accepted at. We're optimistic. We've kind of dialed it in going forward, so we're optimistic about a lot of other screenings that we're up for in the near future, and hopefully with some luck, by this time next year, I'll be if not in the middle of shooting the feature, getting ready to shoot the feature. So stay tuned.
Yeah, well, I would highly recommend that you go out and see it because Michael and I have seen it, and it is awesome.
It is very good.
Yeah. As far as, like, awesome high concepts as a foundation go, like, right up there. And it is also very compelling.
If you are going to go see it, I would recommend don't read the synopsis before you do it. Because I got to go in knowing nothing and got, like, one really serious, like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
So
so that's the thing is that's why when I say like we didn't have the proper like submission material to back it up, that's what I'm referring to. Because I was all about protecting that kind of twist of what it's really about.
Yep.
But what it's really about is the high concept, and so in protecting it, I wasn't really selling what makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's like trying to convince people to go see Jaws without being able to mention that there's a shark in it.
Yeah. So finally, I ended up just kind of coming to peace with like, well, look, when I describe to people that I have a new short film, I tell them what the concept is. So why would I not publicly say what the concept is?
Yep.
And then there's enough twists and turns in it that I think, you learn what it really is about probably 3 minutes in.
Quite early in, yeah.
It's a pretty cool like twist of like what it's really about, but
absolutely.
But at the same time, like I would rather have a kind of a better presentation and kind of log line and hook. That will help it, hopefully, knock on wood, get into some bigger festivals and stuff, than risk keeping everything a secret and it never being seen.
Yeah, absolutely. It is meant to be seen after all. So I guess, like, we've talked a lot about your writing process on the show, but this is one that you've directed as well. And, like, it is gorgeous.
Oh, thanks, man.
Is that... So you've done a bit of directing work before. Is that something that you study up on as well as sort of keeping up on writing?
Yeah, I actually think, I don't know. I don't know that I would say this anymore just because of how much I've written at this point, just from a monthly grind. But even up to like a couple years ago, like I would have said I'm actually a better shooter than I am a writer. And it's tough. Like I've been making movies since I was like 7 years old, and the only reason I ever started writing was really to like go shoot movies. So I would have material to shoot, and it was always something that I don't know. It didn't come easy, but it was something that I could do, and I could figure out how to do it. And then I just kind of stumbled into it as a career, writing. I mean, but but shooting is really like my first love. Like that's like directing, like making movies. Like that's what I've wanted to do since I was a kid, you know? So this was an opportunity to get back kind of behind the camera and make something again. And, you know, I worked in post-production for a long time, before I started writing comics.
All right.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say a long time. I mean, I've done post stuff since I was 16, on like a lot of like freelance stuff. But then I worked at I did like a bunch of freelance assistant editing and visual effects editing and then sound editorial and then sound effects stuff professionally after college, before I started writing full time. And this kind of all started about like a year and a half ago. Brian Buccellato was looking to shoot a short film tied to his comic Sons of the Devil. And I offered to help him finish it and to kind of just handle all the post-production on it, which I did. I actually didn't edit it. I didn't end up having time, but like I did the DI on it, and I did all the sound effects or all the sound editorial on it as well. And then I actually brought a composer in for it, Christopher Carter, who scored a lot of, he scored Batman Beyond and Return of the Joker and
nice.
a lot of the DC animated stuff. He's a friend of mine. He really liked the short, and so he came on to, very graciously to do this short film. And that process for me was like, fuck, I really want to make something again.
Yeah.
It just kind of reawakened for me. And so I just decided, like a few months later, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to find a way to shoot something new, because it'd been a couple years since I'd made anything. And the last thing I'd really made was like 7 years before. And it was my superhero noir, The League, which is what my Image book Cowl's based on.
Yep.
But that movie is what got my career started writing comics. So, I just kind of put this project together, and it was as much to prove to myself that I could do it still, as it was to create a new piece of material, right?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was hard. It was really hard, but it was very worth it. And it was the first time that I've shot something where I got everything that I knew I needed. What I mean by that is, like, a lot of times on set, like, everything will go to shit. Maybe not everything, but stuff will inevitably go to shit. And there are big problems, and you're up against the clock, and everyone, especially on low budget stuff, is working for, basically peanuts.
Yeah. And
you're about to go into overtime. You can't afford it. Whatever. And you start to compromise, and it's always like, oh yeah, I don't need that shot. Oh, it's fine. I've got it in a wide. It's fine. Like, I can make it work in post or whatever. Like, that's the kind of like cliched, age-old thing. Like, we'll fix it in post, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And every time I've ever done that, I know. I mean, everyone makes this mistake. You get into post and you go, I really wish I had that shot. I really wish I would have gotten whatever, or this element that I knew I needed, but I compromised and said, no, it's not that important to the script, right? Yeah. And this was a project that was very intricate. Without saying what it's about, it's very intricate as far as who was playing what role and different elements in their day-to-day lives that come back. There's a lot to keep track of, and a lot in the wardrobe department to keep track of.
Yeah.
And there were things like towards the end, with like the computer and the files and stuff like that. Like, that was all stuff that was very important in order to explain some things from earlier. And it was like, well, do we really need it? It was like, yes, I know we need it. Let's get it.
Yeah.
And we did. And so, yeah, so this was the first time that and so to kind of speak to what your original question was, is like, you just got to shoot, because you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make a lot of stuff that isn't good. And so the only way to really kind of hone it and keep up with it is to keep shooting. this was the first thing like I said, this is the first thing I've shot in some years, and it's what I want to do. Like it's, you know, it's like, you know, getting a taste of something again, like getting a taste of pizza after not having it for a long time. Like, well, that's probably a bad analogy because pizza's terrible for you.
But it tastes so good.
So's filmmaking,
Tastes so good,
right?
yeah. So, but you know, directing movies is not, it pays way more than writing comics does. So, but no, it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I always want to write comics. But I always describe it as like, I want to write comics because I love comics, not because I have to write comics, you know?
Yeah.
And filmmaking and directing is something that is something I'm looking to kind of refocus on. You know, my Twitter bio says, I think I use the term relapsing filmmaker, which is probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, like if anyone wants to check out the site, again, it's theshadowhours.com. There's a nice kind of 2-minute clip that shows what the movie's about, and obviously the logline and everything is up on the site as well. But like, even if you don't read any of that or watch the clip. Just based on the stills, you can see what the movie looks like.
Yeah.
And my DP, Michael Nye, is just unbelievable and
Knocked
did
out of
an
the park, absolutely.
incredible job on it. And my production designer, Lindsay Moran, also did a just fucking killer job on this movie.
Yeah.
And then Bear McCreary scored it. And he hooked it up, man. He hooked it up.
Boy,
So, and there's a sample from the score on the website as well that you can hear, the end credits. So yeah, and hopefully with any luck, you know, it'll be coming to a film festival near you in the not too distant future.
So we'll make sure there's a link to that website in the show notes for this episode, listeners.
Yep.
If you've already forgotten what that URL was, which, like, come on, guys, you know, write it down
Keep
or
up.
something. Yeah. So, Kyle, the next time we speak to you, there will be a new issue of the main Power Rangers book out, but there will also be the Power Rangers Annual out.
Yeah.
So you've got a story in that?
I do. It's a story with Rod Reese. It's his first non cowl, non-image illustrated work, and it's killer. It's a story about a week in the life of Jason, and it's only a 6-page story, and each page is basically a different day in the week, with Thursday and Friday being combined into one page. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to people seeing it. And he's good, man. He's really, really good.
Michael and I talked about this a little bit, actually. He's so good. And I know that his style isn't exactly mainstream, but the fact that he's not headlining big books really takes me aback because, God, he does amazing stuff.
For sure. For sure.
He shared an image of the Red Ranger that I don't believe was part of the story on his Facebook. I think it was just like something he'd drawn, and oh yeah, he could draw Power Rangers forever.
Yeah, yeah, I think he could draw many things very, very well.
And he's also working with you, Kyle, on your upcoming image book.
Yeah, Hadrian's Wall, which is it'll be out September 14th.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That's exciting. Is that an ongoing or a mini or?
It'll be 8 issues. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we might talk a bit more about that next month when it's nearly September.
Yeah.
Kyle, was there anything else you wanted to talk about this week or this month? I guess.
No, I think that'll do it, and we'll all just tune in. Same bat time, same bat channel next month.
Is there anything you want to tease about issue 6?
Well, it's the return of Hendry and Matt Herms, and there are some things that I'd like to tease. How do I want to phrase them? How do you feel about upending the status quo?
Yeah, definitely for it.
Cool. How would you feel about stuff that you never saw on the show. Yeah, we'll just leave it there. Big stuff you never saw on the show.
I think we're definitely on record in 3 years of podcasting as being 100% for that.
Yep.
And I think you're gonna at least be intrigued by issue 6.
All right.
Well, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it. Thank you once again to our co-host, Kyle Higgins.
Nice save.
And listeners, we will see you all again next month for the next episode of Ranger Danger Boom Room. Bye, everyone.